Hi investigators, Mike Evans again with this week's Australian licensed private investigator, government investigator and corporate investigator weekly news. This is the news program for people who really enjoy taking statements and writing factual investigation reports and conducting factual investigations, legal factual investigations. I was only just reading just before we started the program in the paper here. They're saying that Saturday Night Fever, the movie from 41 years ago. Hang on, we better bring up a picture of it. Let's see where we are. Saturday Night Fever. That movie, they're saying that it's homophobic. Now, they're also saying that they're applying today's standards to it, but over the years I've heard that said. But I don't know. I can't remember watching it. It was 41 years ago. I've never watched it since. And they're saying that. So they're claiming that they're putting today's standards on that movie. I don't know. I really couldn't tell you that. I don't know whether that's true or not. But more about Saturday Night Fever in a minute, because it's our movie of the week. This week, we've got to cover some of the things I didn't get a chance to do last week. We just got too busy and I got too carried away. But one of the things that happened last week in Queensland was a firefighter lost a $290,000 compensation case over a Logan House fire that killed 11 people. So this firefighter attended that fire, and basically at that fire, this person got post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the firefighter lost the case. The firefighter was there, and you can Google it in the court. The report, you can Google the outcome as reported by the newspapers, that sort of thing. In this case, Toby Crockford of the Brisbane Times wrote the article, and it tells you why they denied the claim for the firefighter. Now, it seems pretty harsh, but the magistrate was one of those magistrates that was a real stickler for everything to be right. And there was some date mix-ups and things like that. Now, I don't think the firefighter had very good legal representation, because they could have argued memory and all sorts of different aspects, but it seems like he didn't have a really good team, legal team, the poor bugger. So firefighters, they have a very dangerous job. They're first responders. I was actually a volunteer firefighter, and one night we were called to a fire. We were the town fire brigade. The rural fire brigade couldn't attend it because they had another fire. It was midsummer, and they went to that. And this was a fire that was reported not by a person, because there was no mobile phones in those days, but by the forestry fire lookout. They have lookouts in the forest to look for fires in the summertime. There are people sitting there with binoculars and radios, and they reported it. And we went to this fire, and it was only 10 minutes out of town. And we got there, I reckon, within 15 minutes of the report. And we arrived, and the headlights lit up the scene. It had just got dark. And as we turned the corner, I'll never forget it, there was a young lady sitting there, and she was sitting on the curbing of the gutter. It was cement curbing. It was like a perfect seat for her. And she was reading a book, and she was well dressed and well presented. When you get to a fire, you have to do a risk assessment. So it's in the dark. We've got the spotlights out looking for power lines over the head. This car's really gone up, and it's still burning. And you've got to look for fences that are broken and stock that could be running around and other traffic coming, and it's in the dark. It's on a corner. So that risk assessment has to be done. This fire is running everywhere, and the first aiders go and treat the person. And I had to do the risk assessment on the other side of the fire engine, so I didn't see it. But two of the responders got post-traumatic stress disorder from what they saw. And what I saw wasn't what they saw. They saw the other side of the young lady, and it was almost non-existent. The first aider said to her, and I heard her say it, he said to her, "Are you all right, sweetheart?" And she just said, I'm cold." They were the last two words she ever spoke, and she said it to him. He didn't get PTSD. The two younger firefighters that were there that went and saw the other side of it, they did. And it was tragic. And when you hear about this PTSD and interview people about it, they lock onto certain things. It might be the police, they go to the scene and it's a child's teddy bear, or it might be a child's swing, or a photo album, family photo album, or something like that. Terrible tragedy in Melbourne yesterday in relation to a scene where people will be badly affected for a long time to come. So, this fire, these two people did get genuine PTSD, and they were volunteers. They were both under the age of 20. So they're still carrying it with them to this day. So, it happens, but they saw it. So that was the difference between their experience. They weren't listening to it and hearing it remote from it. They were right up and close and personal to what they saw. I didn't actually see what they saw, the ambulance that arrived and that they dealt with it, that sort of thing. So very serious matter, post-traumatic stress disorder. I hope you never have to experience. It's a horrible thing. But as an investigator, you will be interviewing people over that. And you must have the resilience to be able to do that and the empathy to be able to listen to that. So you're going to be asking people about a series of events over time. And you are going to be the person who does that factual investigation and the interviews, and you're probably going to be the person that sees they get compensated for it. So there is, a good side to it, and they help with their medical fees and their psychological treatment, that sort of thing thereafter. So that's part of the role of a private investigator in workers' compensation. Anyway, that one in Queensland, it didn't get up, but that's just what happens. That was in the news. So you can read about Toby Crockford, who's the reporter in the Brisbane Times. If you Google that, you'll hear more information on that. So that happened last week, and the big news that I missed last week that I didn't have time for is these guys. Barrington's in Sydney, New South Wales. They're celebrating their 30th year of being in business. They're a large security risk management, investigation and security organisation. They're a great team at Barrington's. I've worked with them for quite a few of those 30 years. They're great people. They're having a laugh there. I'm sure they'll be celebrating hard this week with what they do. So that's Barrington's and what's happened there. Industry associations, really important. Investigation industry association sounds like a whole bunch of old people doing old people stuff. Well, they're not that much fun, but it is a difficult year for industry associations. They're going to have some imagination out there this year and really look for how they can actually help people who are members of their association. I've looked at the issues that are coming up, and it's like an episode of Play School. So here's what the issues are this year for industry associations. My industry associations, Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. There's 3 big issues this year.
Open, shut them. Open, shut them. Give a little clap, clap, clap.
First one's borders, the second one's transport, getting your guests and your members to your events. The wheels on the bus may not be going round and round, and the people on the plane may not be going up and down. It's going to be a challenge for industry associations. The third issue is communicating your message. If you try to get your members to go to another boring Zoom meeting, your association is going to be crucified by the people who are over that as a result of COVID-19 in 2020.
I'm a dingle-dangle scarecrow with a flippy-floppy hat. I can shake my hands like this and shake my feet like that.
Do not have to have more Zoom meetings in a time where you need to retain and build membership in tough times. There is a solution to that, and I am showing you that next Thursday at 10 a.m. Queensland time, 9 a.m. New South Wales and Victorian time. I'll see you then. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. So there is a solution out there for industry associations wondering what they're going to do. With borders shutting down snappily like they did in Brisbane last week, flights cancelled, you cannot be assured that your conference or your event will go ahead until they sort out their issues with vaccines or whatever they have to do. So there are alternatives to Zoom meetings. None of us want to go to another Zoom meeting and wade all the way through that. We need more action. We need more interaction. We need people to listen to us, and we've got that solution for you next Thursday. If you're involved with an industry association and you haven't heard from your association and they've asked you for a membership fee and they've done nothing for you, get in touch with them and say, look, Mike Evans has got a show for you next Thursday to show you how you can have us all at meetings in an interesting manner where we're going to have a benefit from your association. The technology's there now. It's easy to do, and it's a global phenomenon, the way it's working out at the moment. So that's something to look forward to in industry associations. In other news, I'd like to congratulate Connolly Walker for the winning of a massive contract. These are Australian Security Academy students. They've won that contract last week in relation to security risk management of a major project in Sydney. So well done, Connolly Walker. You always have ensured that your staff are qualified, and it's really reassuring to see that. In October this year, we talked about Judge Guy Andrew, who was found near bushland near Enoggera in the reservoir in Brisbane. Now, he committed suicide. He was in court in northern Queensland, and he'd had an argument with a barrister. Now, that argument went into the legal system, and they sort of found out that it was inappropriate the way he treated the barrister. The barrister withdrew from the matter, and this magistrate had exhibited narcissistic behaviour. Now, in the court, that's a very difficult thing because that means they're not going to listen to you. Basically, they've made up their mind. That's not the legal system. That is this person being a narcissist. So in terms of that, this happened back in October. So what do you do if you're going to be dealing with someone who's a narcissist? Look, they exist in the health system. They exist in the security world. They exist in, I'm sure, the budgerigar breeders world. They exist in retail. They're out there. And if they're a particularly nasty one at the top range level, they are just about impossible to deal with. The first thing you notice when you get a narcissist in front of your face is how they act before they speak. They have low self-esteem. Their self-esteem is as high as your little toe when you're standing up. It's mummy issues and potty issues, and they've got to be very careful about being embarrassed, because if they get embarrassed, they're destroyed. It wrecks them. So before they speak to you, they have to process what they're going to say, and they go, and then they respond. That's what they do, and you notice it. I noticed it with Martin Bryant. That was before he went psycho, but he had autism as well. He wasn't just plain narcissist. So that's what they do. So your first warning is that you see that. Then there's a sigh of contempt for having to reply to you because they're better than you. They're a narcissist. So then you find suddenly they're attacking you. They're spreading rumors about you. They're better than you. That, you know, it just grows and grows, and you really wonder what's going on with it. So what are narcissists? They're self-centered. They have a sense of superiority. They lack empathy or compassion. People are only useful to them while they're useful. Once they're finished with their use, they just destroy them, get rid of them. They manipulate and control. They're masters of the love bomb. That love bomb comes out and they've got you if you swallow it. They have a strong need for admiration and praise. And like I said, it all stems from low self-esteem, and they don't want you to find out that, because that's the worst thing that can possibly happen. So what you've got to say, if you've got a narcissist in your life, is why have you got a narcissist in your life? Are you married to them? Are you working next door to them? Are you engaging them on social media? Are you listening to them on the telephone? Are you reading their posts? What's happening? Get rid of the narcissist and you get rid of the problem. Basically, they get off on being able to control you, make you feel wretched and useless. The toast isn't cooked properly. The peas are on the wrong side of the plate. The chops aren't medium rare, they're medium well done, on the wrong side. Nothing is right for a narcissist. Absolutely nothing. They latch onto you like a leech. Now, I had one do it to me last week, and he said that, you know, people shouldn't use my coffee mugs and advertise my business because I don't have any integrity. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Narcissist. I do have integrity.
Yeah, I was so excited the day I got my integrity. It was just amazing. I look at those twin switches there for the stabilisers. It arrived on March 12th, 2019. Since then I've been to the Deniliquin Ute Muster, I've been down to Tassie, I've been up the top end, been all around Australia in my integrity. It's just been great. And people say I haven't got integrity. Wow. At the Mallee Muster Board for Easter 2021, there's a big rumour that both Macca and Troy Dan are both going to be appearing. So that's something I'm really excited about. It's really, there's some responsibilities with having integrity. You know, you're travelling around the country looking at all the interesting windmills and cows and stuff. But, you know, sometimes you have to do things to help out with the other campers. So sometimes I help out with parking. It's just what we do when we've got integrity. Park over there, mate. That's the Woomera Grapevine gathering. I lead the butcher dance. You know, you put your right arm in, you put your right arm out, and you put your right arm in, and you shake it all about. We have a lot of fun in the camping circuit. You know, I like to have a cup of tea during the day or a cup of coffee. I don't drink, but it's good fun having an integrity. I hope you enjoy having yours, and
Yep, so that's my integrity. Got it on the 19th of March. So what happens about investigators and integrity? Now, this is absolutely an amazing learning opportunity. What is integrity, and do you need integrity? How does the legal system look at integrity? Do they look at some self-appointed god of the investigation industry's point of view? No. Couldn't give a toss about that. Every citizen wandering around Australia in the Westminster system is basically believed to have integrity by our system. That's the way it is. There's a couple of exceptions, maybe driver's licensing, working with children. Oh, God. Passports. So I had a few job applications. So the legal system assumes you have integrity. Now, where you come unstuck as an investigator is you claim integrity. I'm a narcissist. I've got more integrity than you. You do that in the witness box as a private investigator or a witness or a defendant or an accused or whatever. Your integrity isn't on trial unless you claim it. Then when you claim you've got integrity, they can take the gloves straight off and rip into you because you're the person that raised it. Up until that point, you were assumed to have it. Now, you're saying you've got it. They can cross-examine you for the next 5 days on every little aspect of what you did. Now, we had an investigator during a royal commission some 15 years ago in Australia in the witness box, and he was sworn in, he was under oath, and they said to him, you know, this was about the investigation industry, the crooks that were in it then. And they said to him, have you ever done anything wrong in the investigation industry? And he said, no. They said, okay. He said, hang on. They said, what? He said, I've never done anything wrong in the investigation industry, but I know people who do. Which was the stupidest thing ever said in the witness box in Australia, because this was an ICAC investigation. As soon as he said that, they had a brief recess. And ICAC raided his office with a search and seizure warrant within 15 minutes to find out what he knew and what records he had in his office. It was turned upside down. So never, ever, as an investigator or as a person, claim you've got integrity. Because if you do, right, that's what's going to happen. So you can be torn apart with the gloves off and it's just not going to end well. It's going to be very unpleasant. Be very careful of that. So the same investigator said, oh, yes, my government's got integrity issues. I've got all these people that know about it. So what we did, we went and had a look at his investigation, and here's what we found so far.
Yes, I remember, Michael. Back in 1951 in kindergarten, we were playing a game of Snap. What did you say? Who distributed the cards? He did. Yeah, I remember him. We went to see Saturday Night Fever back in 1977. Yeah, he never tried to stop me during the movie. I thought he was gay. He had red hair, freckles. He was skinny and intelligent. Don't know what happened to him. Oh yeah, Mick bought me my first drink. Yeah, at the country dance back in 1961. Yeah. Well, we went out together for at least 2 weekends. Wasn't much fun. He was pretty boring, really.
Well, I don't think the red-haired, freckled one was skinny and intelligent was Mike Evans. I think they should have really concentrated on making sure they got the right Mike Evans. It's a very, very common name. Well, that's what happens when you take off on doing investigations to try and prove you're the best investigator, I guess. We warned about this 6 episodes ago on this very program. He is a person who knows how to investigate. He did investigate, and he taught our students how to investigate. The big issue with investigations is tunnel vision. This was a presentation made by Peter Spence. There are no Sherlock Holmeses in the world. Investigations, 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Never let anyone tell you they're a master investigator. They're not. When you're out there, keep an open mind. Sometimes you might get tunnel vision. We've all done it. Everybody does in investigations. You never make things out of one fact. You don't make 5 facts out of one thing. What you've got to do with the person who you're interviewing or conducting a record of interview with is get their cooperation. In investigations, if you don't learn something new every day, you're not doing your job properly. So don't make things out of facts. Don't make facts out of things. This is the reason you don't have loose cannons in the police going out and bricking people and verbaling people. I mean, it's great that they never verbaled anyone that wasn't guilty when they were a police officer, but you don't do that now. You don't do investigations to destroy people anymore. Those days, they're gone. Everybody just thinks you're an idiot if you do that sort of thing off your own bat. Particularly people who aren't easily impressed, who know actually how to investigate. So, other thing we've got to cover this week are our job vacancies. There's quite a few.
Just gotta let it go. I often sit and wish that I could just change my past. To think about you, Dad, there's so much shit that I could ask. Like, why am I still haunted by the day that you left?
So what have we got this week? We've got a critical incident investigation manager for Quantum Support Services, and they're offering up to $109,000 for that role. With all these jobs you're going to see, people, if you join our Facebook Private Investigator, Corporate and Government Investigator jobs page, you'll see all those jobs listed there and more. Now, these are for private investigators, corporate investigators, and government investigators. We'd only put up around about 30% of the available jobs. We don't put them all up. We haven't got time, but these jobs exist. They've been advertised in the last week or 2 weeks in some cases. Get on, join that Facebook page, and you can review up to 3 years of jobs to do your research and have a look at what they wanted. And you can match your application and use the keywords they do in your application if it's government, and robots are going to pre-check it. So this is a job. This is a great one down in Tassie. This is a lead investigator for the Safe and Fair Community Unit in universities. I used to do a lot of investigations in universities. They were really interesting. No, they weren't all sexual harassment. They were about assessment and marking and unfair treatment of people with disabilities. There were all sorts of whole wide range. But this is for an in-house investigator. in Hobart, that one. There's a public sector fraud investigator position vacant. You can see that on our jobs page. Security Services Manager down in Crown in Melbourne. Again, that's not precisely an investigation role, but anyone with that sort of background, including investigations, is going to be highly regarded for it. Investigation Case Manager at NKG Management in Sydney. They've been around forever, NKG, great people at NKG. They're looking for a case manager. So you are probably going to be allocating the work and following up on the work and getting it in on time. A Manager of Complaints and Investigations at the Victoria Inspectorate for IBAC. What a great job. You're going to be looking after the complaints and investigations about public servants in Victoria. You're never going to have a dull moment. Clarity Investigations. They want private investigators in Melbourne. So they've advertised this week on Seek. So get in there, talk to them, send your resume. Clarity, love to talk to you if you're a licensed investigator. There's an investigator for the EPA in Victoria. Have a look at this, $145,000 they're offering up to, plus superannuation to protect the environment. What a great thing. The platypuses and the wombats are going to be safer because of you. The waterways are going to be safer. What a great job. Fantastic people down there at the EPA. We do a lot of training for them at the Australian Security Academy. Specialist investigator, again, there were two there for that EPA, so there's two positions vacant there. So have a look at those. Join that Facebook page. Don't miss out. Look at the opportunities that are there. So we had our question of the week. Now, here we go, and let's have a look at it.
Hey, hi Mike, Happy New Year. It's Angelo from SAPD. My question is, does the investigation industry have a set of cultural competencies or standards to ensure that investigations are culturally inclusive?
What a great question. I just realised my computer's not plugged in. Thanks, Angelo. What a great question, mate. You win a Australian Security Academy coffee mug for that. It'll be there early next week. Angelo's question was, does the investigation industry in Australia, in this case, we'll take it as a civil investigation industry, have a set of competencies or standards for interacting with people in relation to, they might be from a non-English speaking background or a different culture. So it's got to be culturally inclusive set of standards. What a great question. Now, this is in your training course in private investigations and government investigations. Both of them have different units on it, and they're included in those units. As an industry, the civil investigation industry has a vulnerable customer commitment that they have to train their internal staff and third-party providers. Now, third-party providers are investigators. That's us, licensed investigators. So insurance companies must train not only their internal staff, but anyone who supplies services to them in relation to translation support when communicating or providing information and documentation to people from a non-English speaking background. Now, that's a commitment that's legislated, and you have to do that. They have to ensure it's done, and they want to know how it's done. The Australian General Insurance Code of Practice, in their requirements for vulnerable customers, they say they must provide training to employees in relation to vulnerable customers, including mental health and those affected by mental health, family violence, and working with interpreters. So under the General Insurance Code of Practice, the investigators, again, they're going to be working with the interpreters. They're going to be dealing with people who are victims of family violence, and they're going to be dealing with people with mental health. So the investigators must be trained for that if they're going to work in general insurance. They also must know, and this is a requirement, but it's not a set of competencies as you have suggested, Angela, which don't exist. This is guidelines for process, policy and procedure that each insurer must write, and each investigation agency must receive training in through that insurer. So one of the guidelines is the way the person communicates or expresses themselves, or how they talk, and being aware of that. They also have financial hardship and family violence indicators training. Now, I'm not going to go here into that specifically for people from different cultures, that doesn't say that. This is general across all. So there is a heading there, they must have financial hardship and family violence indicators training, so the investigator or the claims manager can identify that either in person or through the phone call. They also must have training in mental health indicators, so customers who may have past or current mental health conditions. It's really common in car accidents for people who have a driver's license who have a mental health condition. It's very common. They have accidents like anybody else, and they need a support person there when they're interviewed over their car accident. Now, they didn't deliberately cause the accident. It's minor. It's some financial damage, and they may have to be interviewed in relation to negligence and liability over it. But if they identify themselves as someone who has a mental disability, they work, and they will give you a statement because they're required to, but you must know how to handle that, those mental health indicators and what to do. And just off the cuff, support person is really important in relation to that. And if it's a person from a different culture, a support person and an interpreter, and maybe some other person might be needed, who knows. Now, third parties, that's all private investigation agencies, they must receive training in managing vulnerable customers. In order to exercise a duty of care for vulnerable customers, insurers and their third-party representatives should have training in awareness of customer vulnerability and to improve responses to customers affected by vulnerability. They must have escalation processes so that employees with specialist training can provide recommendations and support and maintain oversight. How's that claim going? How's it progressing for Mrs. Jones from Switzerland, or whatever it is? So engage the customer with dignity, sensitivity, respect and compassion in order to minimise impact to the party. They have to have training in that. So this is a requirement. It's a process, policy and procedure requirement. They also have a specific one, and this goes back to your question, Angelo. They have to have managing customers who require an interpreter or literary assistance. So for customers who have been identified as vulnerable due to language or literacy, the insurers or the representatives should use best endeavours to provide access to an interpreter, and they do. They provide training to employees who are likely to be involved in communications requiring an interpreter. Well, they do that. Most of them have a process, policy and procedure induction given to you. They record the customer's interpretation needs on their file, including if an interpreter is offered but declined. I've never had that. I've never had any trouble with interpreters except in 2 matters. And that's over hundreds of matters. And it wasn't the interpreter's problem, it was the interviewee's problem. And provide publicly available information about interpreter services, including teletyping services. Okay, that might be important for some reason. So they're the requirements. So it comes across from process, policy and procedure in being an insurance company, and combined with the General Insurance Code of Practice. And there could be others in there, which I haven't listed, but they're the specific ones. And Angelo, that was just a really, really brilliant question. As a TAFE teacher, over the years, I've been involved with people in migrant programs for some 20 years now. You think of people in migrant programs coming from wars in Europe, as peasants in headscarves and stuff like that. They're not, no. They're concert pianists, they're lawyers, they're accountants, they're amazingly qualified people. Their English is very ordinary. They come here with horror stories of what happened to their husbands and sons and stuff like that during the war. All they want to do is move on with their lives and build a new future and move forward. So assisting them in relation to insurance purchase or insurance claims, that sort of thing, is a role that's put on insurance companies by the government through legislation, and such as the General Insurance Code of Practice, which also, that's not legislation, it's a volunteer compliance thing with insurance companies, but the government watch it and monitor it because they want people looked after. They don't want them ripped off just because they're vulnerable. I'm not aware of any insurance company or any investigation agency ever do it. I've only ever seen people actually treated with respect. So that's the answer to your question in relation to it, but there's no written, accepted, learnable studyable, accessible, passable set of competencies. And I'm sure, I know your experience, Angela. I know your background in TAFE teaching, and I'm sure that's something you could write. And it's something that would get up and be in demand if it was meshed into what I just explained. So, great question. Yeah, you've got a coffee mug on the way. It'll be there next week. So I've covered everything: industry association, job vacancies, that's a lot. We are introducing, and I'll announce it next Friday, a new system of giving assessment, preparation and assistance to our students. What we used to do up until last week for 2 weeks, it proved very popular. We've just tweaked it so you can see me face to face in relation to that. That's our program for this week, people. I'll see you next week, where we'll be looking at a whole different range of things. I'm going out with my Koreans.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
Yes, that's what every investigation does at the end of every week. They ask all their units to come back. Koreans have the best sense of humour.